everybody. This week we talked to Dexter de la Paz, or Paz. You can find him on Twitter at DogmanRespecter, or you can listen to his podcast at the Gaslight Hour. All of those links will be in the show notes or at dissectingliberty.com/38. Enjoy the show. Hey everybody, welcome to the Dissecting Liberty podcast. Today, Zero and I are joined by one of our favorite guests, Dexter de la Grug, otherwise known as Paz. I've been cooking up that little tidbit right there for a while.
That little cold open.
Yep, that's right. So, Paz, what do you think about getting grugged and grugging?
I think that in the day and age that we live in, here in the modern world, it is extremely important not to capitulate to the news cycle, and as such to keep morale high in whatever ways and whenever possible. And if that means inventing a new bit every single day, you and the boys, you all dive right the fuck into it.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Liberty Zero didn't engage in the grugging. The gruggening.
You're right. Don't you do that like with Snapchat or something? Yeah.
I don't even know. I just sent Bert a photo and he did it for me.
It's Face app.
Face app. Oh, okay. The Chinese app that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Be careful what you say about the Chinese. We're on Zoom right now, so.
You're right.
Well, there goes that conversation point, huh?
So,
not even Dark Tom Woods this time. It's the Chinese.
I don't know if you remember. Do you remember like what we were originally going to talk about? Pause.
Yeah, I do remember the topic that we talked about talking about. And I say we could do a pretty underwhelming run at it. But like I was telling Cotton Zero, I've only got until 8:30 here to record. So we can either give it a light treatment or we can just kind of riff. But what we were going to talk about is a little bit of esoteric American history and the possibility of early America being an owl.
Okay. I have a suggestion then. I think we should save that and make it a bigger episode and really get into it. But for now, we can just kind of hang out.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah, it deserves the full treatment. There's a lot of things that people don't know about the royalists in that first couple generations of American government.
Yeah.
Yeah, the extent of my knowledge when it comes to the topic that we had discussed was basically a Dangerous History podcast with the Prof. CJ's like history on the American Revolution, and that's about it in terms of not alternate history, but
well, look, I
history
love
that you don't learn about.
CJ. I love CJ to death. But, you best believe that there's a lot of stuff I'm prepared to go hog wild on that people who have more respectability and a bigger brand can't dare to touch. It's a very specific need in this community.
That's very true. All right. Yeah, that sounds good. We'll do that. Share some links in the Twitter chat and, hopefully we'll get that in the next few weeks.
So I do have a topic that we can talk about. I have recently, I've been finding it really hard to be optimistic.
Oh yeah.
And so Paz, right now for people like me, do you have any advice or things to keep in mind? Because you always seem like a pretty happy guy,
Well, I'm glad that I've been able to project that for the people foolish enough to follow me on social media. But I think that at the key of real happiness it's going to sound super cliche and it's going to sound like lifestyle guru bullshit, but it really all comes down to a matter of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't muster perspective for yourself, then I'd say it's important to muster perspective for others. I think one of the really underrated keys to masculinity and being satisfied as a dude, I can't speak for the grugettes in the audience, but one of the real keys is the embracing of responsibility and the embracing of virtue. And if I can shill for just a moment, I think that runs perfectly in conjunction with the concept of King Friday that I'm sure everyone has seen around. It becomes much easier to be happy and satisfied with your life when you are able to actively support the people you care about. And I don't necessarily mean that in a tangible, physical way, but as we know, that's not even necessarily the key to happiness. It's really about being able to support others and be able to show them the positivity, thus finding the positivity in yourself.
Hell yeah. I'm all about King Friday.
So is that a good introduction? Is that the kind of stuff we're looking for here?
Yeah. I mean, and part of this for me is the coronavirus stuff is getting to me. Not worrying about whether I'm going to get it. Like, I don't care. But I mean, I assume I'm going to get it, that is if like, I don't know. Okay. Here's another question. Do you think that, getting the coronavirus is like a real threat?
So,
and we'll get back to what we were talking about, but just to get this out of the way.
Yes, and I am going to say it for these reasons. As someone who has been watching this develop and their narrative around it change constantly since January, I was way fucking out in front of this before a lot of the Johnny come latelys, and I've got podcast appearances to prove it. But I think it is absolutely a threat, if for no other reason then we still have literally no idea what the long-term implications of this are, or what the virus actually is. It's still predominantly understood to be something that affects your lungs through the ACE2 protein receptor. But even then, we've seen counter-contrarian evidence where it causes brain damage because it can also be carried in the blood through the blood-brain barrier. So, even if the mortality is low, and I'm not so sure that it's as low as people are trying to make it sound, I think that even if we accept their best case scenario, that's still not a reason to be nonchalant about it because we don't actually know what it's doing to our bodies.
Okay. Because I know that, like, I'm not incredibly worried about getting it. Like, I don't think it is undangerous, but I do think that at a certain, I'm more scared of getting the vaccine than I am of actually getting the virus.
Yeah, and I mean, I can agree with you right there. I wouldn't say that I am an absolute anti-vaxxer, but I don't get any of them that I don't feel like I absolutely have to have, and that includes the flu vaccine. I don't bother with it ever.
Yeah.
And regardless of how safe they're rated, I talked with Dutch about this, and Dark Tom actually was on that episode too. We talked a whole bunch about what we do and don't actually know about vaccines and how they work, and it's pretty well established that some of them do plenty of good for a person, and it's not like they're a death sentence to get, but the idea that they don't have their own side effects or risks is also ridiculous to think at this point.
Yeah, I remember listening to that podcast when I was driving back from Childerberg. But like, and this is what I've been leading up to is I'm not incredibly worried about getting the Kung flu, but what is getting to me is just like I'm in school and I don't know what that's going to entail. Like my entire future is incredibly uncertain right now. And that's getting to me as it would get to anybody. And I'm sure a large portion, if not a small majority of the population feels the exact same way to some degree, and it's not sustainable,
It's definitely not. And I'm right there with you. A lot of people are still in the mindset where they're acting like there's going to be some kind of rebound, quote unquote return to normal. And I'm not shilling the new normal because I think that's an idiotic fucking concept. But to think the world's just going back to the way it was is also dumb as hell. I'm at the point right now where I'm leaning into the Gibbs laws of economics be damned. If everything's burning and the state and the powers that be have shown a willingness to just torch it all at this point, they don't know what they're doing. They're flailing around. I think that no matter how much uncertainty is present, they're going to keep throwing Federal Reserve notes at the problem until it goes away or it finally finishes collapsing. So that actually creates a wonderful opportunity. If you don't have bills to pay, take those Trump bucks and buy some Bitcoin. And all of a sudden you're so far ahead of the game that it's ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, there's a lot of scary stuff going around, but really this is like the last stop at the train station. This is your chance to really set up for things in a way that maybe your means wouldn't traditionally allow you to do so. Because like I said, they're just going to keep throwing fiat at the problem, and fiat's going to stay valuable as long as the normies think that there's going to be a normal to go back to.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add to this, Zero? Like, how have you been doing? I know you just had a big event, and I'm sure that has been very uplifting. But
yeah,
how have you been throughout this whole thing?
Well, I mean, I was texting you the other day about buying land, and that's mostly just so that I can be as far from people, but less reliant on people.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like I mean, like you're talking about, you're not like you're getting like you're trying not to be blackpilled right now, and I'm kind of at the point where I am, and like I'm trying to be positive.
Well, let me stop you right fucking there. I'm not accepting any black pill talk from anyone. You're gonna fucking make it, King, even if we have to drag you to the top with us. I just got done saying this is a time of unprecedented opportunity for all of us, man. And if you've got some stuff stocked away, grab that land with both hands. That is the only good on the planet that you can't make more of.
Yeah.
See, look at that. You're already ahead of the curve.
Yeah, and so that's kind of what I've been thinking about a lot lately is just being as self-sufficient as possible, and just being at that place where I can avoid some of the stuff that I think is coming down the line in terms of.
Did either of you guys get on the Kickstarter for Morlock Publishing's homesteading guide?
No,
I've never heard of that.
Oh man, okay, I'll tell you more about that later, but if it's something you're curious about, the Kickstarter's closed now, but I'll give you the name of the book and maybe you can grab it when it comes out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Sounds
something
good.
that seems keenly tuned to your interests if it's something you're thinking about so heavily and with some degree of immediacy from the sound of it.
Yeah, and so it's something definitely like within the next year is what I'm kind of hoping, but we'll have to see.
More good news for you. Another white pill. Land prices are gonna fucking crater too.
Yeah.
What are?
Land prices.
Braces?
Prices.
Land
prices.
Oh, prices.
E.
Well, I totally misheard both words on that one. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Hopefully.
And right now they're not low, but I mean, just everybody's buying. Like, I mean, houses in my area at the very least may stay on the market literally for less than 24 hours.
Wow.
Well, everyone's grabbing now because they think this is the bottom of the market.
Yeah.
But if you wait till about the end of September or so, when the eviction moratoriums get lifted, people are being thrown out left and right. I mean, it fucking sucks for them. But that land, those houses, they're going to be cheap. I mean, think about all the Airbnb super landlords that can't afford to hold on to all their property with nobody traveling.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be shit on the market for pennies left and right, probably for the next year, starting once we hit September. So.
Yeah, that's true. Well, you know, with like trying not to get too far down in the dumps here, but this is a question for each of you. Like how do you see the rest of this COVID situation panning out? Do you think that there's going to be more lockdowns? Like how far, or like how long do you think that this is going to keep going?
I don't think that anybody can afford to have another lockdown. Like, I don't think the government has enough fuel in their tank to support another like incredible dip in production like that, you know?
So here's the deal. I think they throw another try at lockdowns, but I don't think it actually happens.
Yeah.
Because the only way to make a lockdown work is to keep sending checks. And you've seen how hard it is to rip those motherfuckers out of their hands, unless you're a defense contractor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also I don't think, at least in my area, I can't say to the rest of the country, because it's almost as if like there are incredible amount of different cultures in this one country of ours. But in my area, if there was another lockdown, I genuinely do not think people would adhere. I think a hell of a lot of people would say fuck it. And they're like, I don't care. I'm going to keep my business open. I'm still going to go to work. I'm going to go out to eat. I'm going to this, I'm going to that. I do not think people would play along, because right now we have a mandatory mask order, and people are very hesitantly and reluctantly adhering. But it's been in effect for 3 weeks now, I think. And on the first day, everybody was wearing a mask. But since then, I'm seeing less and less people wearing a mask. Like I had a family member that went out and about, ran some errands, and they forgot their mask. And they were like, well, I'll see what I can get away with. And they went into banks and businesses and not wearing a mask, and nobody cared. I mean, like the only place around here that is really, really hard about it is Walmart for whatever reason. But like,
well, that's just a corporate stance they've taken around the country, that they're actively enforcing it.
Well, I heard that, was it Lowe's, Walmart, Home Depot, some of those bigger stores have actually they've decided they're not going to enforce the mask wearing anymore, just because. And not that I'm cheering this on, but they decided against it because there was too many violent incidents of them, you know, like their employees.
Boomer cons getting fucked up over it.
Yeah.
Boomer cons getting yeeted at the Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have a cop out in front of our Walmart that makes sure everybody's wearing a mask.
That's a little weird and creepy.
Yeah, that's why I don't go to Walmart.
So I talked with Anarchist Garage about this. I think it's really important to emphasize to people, because Liberty Twitter and Liberty social media seems to have an bend towards inherent contrarianism, and also an extremely short memory on top of that. And I would just like to point out to all of them and say again, also on your platform, if you'll permit me, that masks are good actually. And just because the government is telling you to wear one doesn't mean it's the wrong thing to do. Because if anyone can stretch their little pea brains as far back as March, they'll remember that every government in the West and the WHO and all these other motherfuckers explicitly told you not to wear one so that they could literally buy up the domestic supply for themselves. And that's why people are wearing cloth masks. That's why people are all making their own, because the government told you not to wear it so they could fucking buy them. Now, all of that being said, this is still fundamentally an issue of self-sovereignty. So if you don't want to wear it, I'm not your dad, and I'm not telling you you have to. I'm just asking you to fucking remember how we got to this point and maybe question what the narrative is now based on what you should have already known.
Yeah, and like I'm definitely not going to argue with the fact that they wanted to buy up all those masks. As far as whether it's all that useful, I do think that if you are symptomatic with COVID or any other virus or disease that can be spread through like coughing or something like that, then it would be useful for that. But in terms of its efficacy otherwise, or even like the wisdom of wearing one, like if you're not symptomatic, or like you just don't have it, right? I think that the cons outweigh the pros on that, just because you're basically after like 20 minutes or something like that, all the bacteria and the moisture is building up on that mask, and it's a breeding ground for bacteria, and you're just breathing that in, especially like the longer that you wear it. Well, I mean, that's my thoughts. I mean, what do you guys think?
I mean, I think that's a load of hogwash, and I think SARS-1 can prove that if you look at the robust mask culture in all of East Asia. But, granted, we're all fucking anti-xenophiles here in America. God forbid we acknowledge the wisdom of the Koreans or the Japanese or the Taiwanese. And I might remind everyone that the Western world only found out about the Wu flu because of what happened when the Taiwanese health minister, or deputy health minister rather, was browsing their version of 4chan.
Yeah.
So, I think it's
I haven't heard this.
Dude, yeah, that's how the Western world found out about it. China, the outbreak started in December. I don't give a shit what anyone says about it starting before then. And this is me taking a personal opinion on that.
Okay.
But then, literally days before Christmas, the Taiwanese deputy health minister was literally browsing an image board that they've got there, a popular one, right? It's literally the equivalent of Taiwanese 4chan. And he saw posts from people in China talking about it. And so he got with his boss, the actual health minister, or whatever they call that cabinet position there, got with him. They looked into it, and they had their fucking full-on mask mandates within a week of that. And, then take that and run the Taiwanese numbers against what we know about China, despite knowing for a fact that it's also worse than what they're reporting. Run those numbers against Italy or France or any of the other places, Iran, that got absolutely hammered. And I think you'll see right there the absolute difference. Now, people will say it's because of track and trace, but that doesn't make any difference, because track and trace programs are, first of all, fascist. And even if they weren't fascist, they would also be legitimately ineffective, because there's no way to actually trace a specific virus until it presents itself. Otherwise, you're just tracing random symptoms that could be caused by any number of things.
Mm-hmm. Well, what do you think about what do you think about the strategy? So, right, there's two different strategies. The traditional one, since people have known about viruses and they knew enough to come up with a strategy, the traditional strategy has been that you watch who's being affected most by a virus, right? And you isolate those people, and then everyone else, you allow them to continue their daily lives, allowing us to gain herd immunity. And that at that point you're not passing it around to any great degree.
Yeah,
and
vulnerable populations.
Right.
I think that is actually a strategy I like and favor. And the only reason I would be at all skeptical of it here is, again, we just don't know what the long-term ramifications are of this particular virus. We've been dealing with various flus for hundreds of years, but we've never seen SARS version 2, which is literally what this is. And, between that, and to go back to, again, let's talk about the actual origins of this thing. People keep forgetting about the Wuhan Institute of Virology. We don't know what this thing is, and we don't know what it does. So I would err on the side of caution with this specifically, but endorse the strategy as a whole, because it's really the only viable plan to keep society functioning as we know it and to try and protect our supply chain infrastructure that keeps everything running.
Well, okay, so you're saying that, like, your main concern with this is that we don't know the long-term effects, right?
Yeah, that's my biggest hesitation about the entire COVID-19 thing.
Okay.
I'm not concerned anymore that it's going to kill in great droves, though I was initially, and I will say I do think deaths of this have been underreported, not overreported.
Yeah.
But that said, I'm still not concerned about a Black Plague level of die-off. I'm just concerned about health ramifications as a direct result of infection a few months from now, a couple of years from now, increases in excess mortality just as a result of having had it in the first place. I want to know what this does to us long term, and there's no way to know it because it's never existed in the world before.
Yeah. So I have a question, and this is mostly just because I'm ignorant of diseases for the most part. I don't pay attention to it much. I'm a fairly healthy guy, and I don't worry about it. But do you have any examples of other viruses, specifically viruses, right? Where there are long-term effects versus just the short, just like a virus with short-term effects, right?
Well, shit. I mean, smallpox and polio are both viruses, right?
Yeah. And so that's something that'll permanently disable you to some degree.
Yeah.
But I guess a better question would be, this has been here for a few months. Do you have any examples of a virus that the long-term effects are slow to reveal themselves?
I'm not a medical historian. I'm not really in a place to comment on that, though I would say that even as this one has demonstrated to us, Iran is now seeing, or Iran rather, is now seeing cases of actual reinfection of people who were assumed immune. So between that and the fact of chronic fibrosis of the lungs after having been infected and recovered, between brain damage in some patients, and between the natural risks of just being on a ventilator at all, I'd say that there's huge risks of atrophy at the very least, at damage to your circulatory system, a damage to your lungs themselves. So again, we can't say any of that definitively. We've only got anecdotal piecemeal cases of it to this point, and that's why we should be concerned, because we just don't know. And again, this is all strictly speaking my opinion, and I realize it's going to be quite controversial among the circles we run in.
Right, yeah. Well, Well, one final thing before, like I've kind of hogged the mic here, and I'll let Cotton get back to it. But like in terms of the recurring cases, right, where you're talking about people catching it again, and that's something that we've seen as we've seen like different headlines about that here. My only, or I guess my counter to that is that like I think it's the CDC was the one who admitted that basically all this COVID tests, they're not actually testing for COVID-19 specifically, and that like you can get a positive result if you have any traces of a coronavirus in your system. So do you think that might account for this talk of recurring cases?
I think it certainly could. And for that reason, we should actually be all the more careful, because it's worth noting that a lot of these tests that we're getting are actually imports, either directly from China or secondhand from China via European nations.
Mm-hmm.
And, our own testing production is ramping up. But my understanding of it is that you're correct, and there's not a specific one for SARS-CoV-2 or whatever the full virus name is. And, that creates all the more reason to be cautious for this exact reason. That means a lot of people think they've tested positive or been positive in the past, and they might never have had it at all. And that's going to lead to a lot of false confidence if we're not careful, or if we don't understand what we're dealing with.
Right. Okay, yeah, I see where you're coming from there.
Oh, yeah, well, fair enough. So before you have to head out, pause.
Yeah, I got another 10, 15 minutes.
Okay, I have one thing that gave me a little hope recently.
Oh, I want to hear this.
Hell yeah, and it applies to you too. So, I am in a discipline where I plan on getting my PhD, and I'm an intellectual, even if that's hard to believe, but I'm in one of those disciplines. And I was thinking about, like, as you were saying earlier, just, screw it. The collapse is coming. Let them help you out as much as they can before, they collapse. And I'm sympathetic to that argument, but what may bring people down with that is the collapse. Things will be different. I think people will feel like they have been cheated. But what I think they are not seeing is the massive amount of opportunity. Like I'm in psychology, and I have major issues with academic psychology. Like most of academic psychology is just a lie. It's fake, and it's
the replicability crisis comes from psychology, correct? Yep. That was the origin of it.
Yes, and it's a lot of the same issues in economics are felt in psychology. That being the replicability problem, and also the empiricism is an issue. So for me, a possible collapse in like the university system and like the dethroning of the intelligentsia is incredibly exciting for a radical like me that feels that I have a better view of this field, but right now I cannot write about it or make that stuff known because I would be blackballed, So, yeah. And that gave me a bit of hope, and it will not be an incredibly happy time if it happens soon. A lot of people will be out of work, and I'm sure there will be a lot of cornered animals that will lash out. But it is exciting for radicals like us to be on somewhat of an equal footing again with the people that rule intelligentsia, you know?
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? And I said last time you two so graciously hosted me that you need to homestead your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say this time that you need to actively homestead the world around you. And I use that as a metaphor or a manner of speaking to say that you need to not just, all that new age hocus pocus about pushing out your intent and having the mindset to do something. You need to actually do it because there is no mistaking that bad things happen when societies collapse. But at the same time, the only people who need to fear living in the aftermath are people who were never free before.
Mm-hmm.
If you are capable or even merely have the desire to live without the crown in your life, you're already set for what it'll look like afterwards. You just need to worry about dodging a little bit of falling rubble while it happens.
Yeah. And yeah, that I really like that idea of homesteading your mind. And I mean that is basically just the whole idea of being red pilled, right? It's just being able to, and I mean it's a weird phrase depending on the context of who says it, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, it came out of the quote unquote manosphere where everyone was trying to pull club skanks. That's the origin of the term. I don't really like it in that context because I've always got Roosh and Cernos and all those motherfuckers' old blog posts from like circa 2011 stuck in my head when someone says red.
Yeah, but like when I use it, I mean, um, you have been exposed to a truth, and it's not necessarily just like a factoid or something. Like the war in Iraq was evil or is evil. You know, it's not something like that. It's just like you were exposed to a framework that changed how you observe things in your life. Like it was a an unexpected reprogramming of how you look at things, and it made you notice certain things that you'd never noticed before. And that's what I mean by red pill. But and I think that is a very similar idea to homesteading your own mind. Like a hell of a lot of people uh, realized that the emperor wasn't wearing clothes, you know, and that's, I would argue, people in our community. Um, and I think that is not solely what they need to do or we need to do, but I think that is the first step in
Yeah,
being
it's
able
great to
to,
talk the
yeah,
talk, but then you gotta get ready to walk the walk with it, right?
yep, yep. And I do think, like, I wrote an article recently about what I called social media libertarians, you know, people that
Mhm.
adopt a political ideology because they really like the memes and whatnot, or fall into the group on Twitter or whatever.
Yeah, literal egregore victims.
Yeah, and I think that's a harm, because then like, because they don't really stand for anything. Like I said, like the quickest to join a movement is the quickest to leave, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
that I was talking to do, do you know the Insurrection Inc. podcast?
Yeah, kind of tangentially, I'm aware of them.
Yeah, they're good guys. I was in Auburn recently with two of their hosts, or no, three of their hosts.
And that
And
was while you guys were doing Mises U or whatever, right?
yeah. Um, and I was talking this idea out with Stratton from Insurrection Inc., and he was saying, like, that's the libertarian to alt-right pipeline. You know, these people just kind of float from ideologies based on memes, you know, and then they and also just like they like the idea of being radical, you know.
Yeah, and I think maybe even more so than alt right. I think the one to really look out for, and this is a small critique, this might be a little niche, but I think the better example is libertarian to neo reaction pipeline.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mentioned NRX and Dark Enlightenment and all that.
Oh, well, perfect. You and me are already on a wavelength then, aren't we?
Oh hell yeah! I read The New Right recently, and then that sent me down a couple of rabbit holes. And it really kind of connected a couple things for me. But yeah, and I think a big thing that a lot of people in our group need to do is read, which like I think a lot of people are like, yeah, duh. But I think people just need to read, like read Marx, read Rothbard, read that person, read this person, just
Yeah,
read,
and even better than reading theory, because that takes so much formal, in the moment, actual processing.
Mm-hmm.
I want to show my homeboy, too, actually, the OG, the GOAT himself, Robert Heinlein,
Yep.
because it's easy to digest fiction. It's written simply, and it will always leave you thinking, because you'll see what he's trying to present to you behind the entertainment images without being forced to digest literal math formulas in the process.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, sort of his spiritual successor, the finest sci-fi author still with us today, Travis Cochrane, and the Powers of Earth books, the Aristoteles series. You guys, you got to check those out. They're so good. Follow him on Twitter, Morlock Publishing. The guy's fantastic.
Yeah, and in my opinion, Dostoyevsky is very much in that line. Really great fiction, but there's a hell of a lot of forces going on in the background. Whether it be like Notes from Underground, which a lot of people really like because it's short, or Crime and Punishment, just this real dense book. But there's a hell of a lot going on behind this fictional story. But yeah, definitely. Like I got the Moon is a Harsh Mistress audiobook recently, but I'm going to have to buy the actual book
Yeah, and
because
that's what my entire social media brand was based around. I call myself fucking De La Paz after the character, Bernardo De La Paz.